The situation the American people are in today reminds me of the story of the two skeletons locked in the closet. One skeleton turned the other and rattled, how do we get in here? And the other skeleton rattled back, I don't know, but if we had any guts, we'd get out.
Are you listening, Uncle Sam? A program featuring the thoughts and voices of grassroots America will return after these words from our sponsor.
Are you listening, Uncle Sam? Well, today you're in for a real treat, because for the next 12 minutes, you're going to hear excerpts from a speech delivered by that modern-day Will Rogers, Mr. Tom Anderson. Now, as you probably know, Sam, Tom Anderson is the former publisher and editor of Farm and Ranch magazine and is now president of Southern Farm Publications in Nashville, Tennessee. He's not only acclaimed for his wit and humor, but even more so for his ability to reduce the most seemingly complex world situations into a single phrase that cuts right through to the core of the issue without a lot of bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo. And he can let the air out of a political stuffed shirt faster than any man alive. So light up your corncob pipe, Sam, and listen now to Tom Anderson as he discusses a not-so-very-funny subject, bipartisan treason.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Once upon a time, a hunter cornered a bear in the wilderness and took careful aim at close range. Just before he was about to pull the trigger, the bear held up his paw and says, "Wait just a minute, Mr. Hunter. There's no reason you and I can't negotiate this matter and coexist peacefully. After all you want is a fur coat, and all I'm hunting for here is a full stomach. So let's sit down and talk it over." Well, being a typical American who knows there's nothing to be hurt by just sitting down and talking things over, the hunter agreed. And so they sat down and negotiated. And both did get what they wanted. The bear got a full stomach, and the hunter got a fur coat. We can coexist just like they did, or just like the lion and the lamb coexist. All you have to do is to pitch a fresh lamb in the cage each morning. I've seen this no-win policy in operation in various places around the world. It's a bipartisan no-win policy. It's been in existence for many years. As Hiram Mann said, no man escapes when freedom fails. The best men rot in filthy jails, and those who cried, "Appease, appease," are hanged by those they tried to please. Appeasers are people who feed a crocodile hoping it'll eat them last. Just a relatively few years ago, when Karl Marx died, there were only 8 people at his funeral. Most of our State Department people were too young to go. In the ensuing few years, the communists have captured more people than Christianity can now count standing after 2,000 years. Since 1945, the so-called end of the war, the communists have enslaved 750 million people from within. They now have 40% of the people and 25% of the land mass in chains. And the big red army didn't fire a shot. Who caused the communist gains? Was it the so-called right-wingers like Senator McCarthy or Senator Taft or Robert Welch? No. It was the left-wingers who've been in the saddle. And those faceless, anonymous characters in the State Department who can't even be identified, many of them. They remind me of that new deodorant they call Stereo. It doesn't stop the odor, but you can't tell where it's coming from. Why is freedom forever on the defensive? Why are we always reacting instead of acting? We cannot negotiate freedom. The communists have never kept a pledge that amounted to anything, yet we keep negotiating. We have and have had government by misrepresentation, a government which has discarded the Constitution, usurped the sovereignty of the states, robbed the people of their material wealth and their freedom, given away our substance to the world without end, and left us subject to defeat by foreign power. The situation the American people are in today reminds me of the story of the two skeletons locked in the closet. One skeleton turned the other and rattled. How do we get in here? The other skeleton rattled back. I don't know, but if we had any guts, we'd get out. How did we get locked up in this closet? Now, we conservatives are spending a lot of time, wasting a lot of time, I think, arguing about whether it was planned that way or whether it was a series of accidents. Personally, I think treason is the reason. I think you go to the same cashier every day and get shortchanged, it's no longer a mistake. We've got people in our State Department who have never made a mistake in our favor. Speaking of mistakes, I heard a story about a girls' school across from Notre Dame that was having an annual dance, and to their horror, they discovered that the Notre Dame team was to be in Chicago, and 30 girls were dateless for that Saturday night. The headmistress rose to the occasion, called a nearby army camp, and told them a predicament and said, "Could you possibly send over 30 men?" They said, "Why, yes, we'd be glad to oblige." She said, "Well, I'm terribly embarrassed to have to mention this, but you know this is a Catholic institution, and we'd appreciate it if you wouldn't send any Jews." So about 30 minutes before the grand march, there was a knock on the headmistress's door, and she went, and there was a Negro corporal from Alabama, flanked by 29 other Negro GIs, and he saluted snappily and says, "Reporting for duty, ma'am." She said, "My good man, there must be some mistake." He said, "No, ma'am. Captain Goldberg don't never make no mistakes." Well, you know, the Russians, with typical diabolical communist cunning, claim that they've got freedom of religion for the few remaining crackpots who are interested. We were there. I was over there with Secretary Benson on a tour. We went to Red Square to see the Russian guard Lenin, who was lying beside co-guard Stalin before he was deguarded. They were there in their glass showcases, bathed with an orange-colored light, looking like a couple of mackerel. The only well-dressed people we saw in Moscow, all dressed up and no place to go. And after we left them, we went to the Central Baptist Church. We found that it was playing to its usual 3 nights a week, standing room only crowd of about 1,200 people, standing 4 deep around the sides. When our group of 15 walked in, they all stood. They quickly vacated pews for us down front. They recognized us for Americans. We made it down to our pews with great difficulty because the people forged out into the aisle. They tugged at our sleeves. They hugged us. A few kissed us. With tears streaming down their faces. These old folks know that we are what stands between the world and slavery. For if the lamp of freedom is blown out in America, the world will be thrown into darkness. A member of our group was called to the pulpit. He preached a sermon of love and faith. hope and truth. I believe very firmly in prayer, he said. It's possible to reach out and tap that unseen power which gives us strength and such an anchor in time of need. Be not afraid, keep this commandment. Love one another. Truth will endure. Time is on the side of truth. Thus spake Ezra Taft Benson, Mormon apostle. As each sentence was translated, the old women would take the handkerchiefs off their heads and wave them vigorously and moan, "Da, da, da." Yes, yes, yes. Cynical newspaper correspondents, along with Benson, who had griped about a command performance in church with a Mormon apostle, stood in this church crying. These old folks have what some returning bubbleheads have described as freedom of religion. It's freedom to spend their last few years without being shot in the back of the neck. These old people can attend church. They have no jobs to lose. The communist plan is that when these so-called last believers die off, that religion will die with them. What the God-hating tyrants don't know is that God can't be stamped out by legislated atheism or by firing squad. As we filed out, they sang, like I've never heard it sung before, "God be with you till we meet again." And all knew we never would on this earth. In our group, we also knew, and this depends on the American people, this depends on you, if we have the courage and the morality. And I'm convinced that we've got everything else it takes in superabundance. If we have the courage and the morality, the greatest force in the world, love of God, will destroy, wipe out, and not coexist with this diabolical conspiracy of hate. Thank you.
Are you listening, Uncle Sam? A program featuring the thoughts and voices of grassroots America is produced by the John Birch Society, directed by Ed Griffin.
Major portions of today's program were condensed from the LP recording entitled Bipartisan Treason, a lecture by publisher and humorist Tom Anderson, and was used with permission of Key Records. If you would like information on how to obtain the full unedited version for your record library, just send a stamped self-addressed envelope to the John Birch Society, San Marino, California. That's the John Birch Society, San Marino, California.